manipulating a blood pressure, manipulating your reflux symptoms, manipulating something without telling you why you have that and addressing the root cause is a management strategy. If you don't want just a management strategy that you need to take for the rest of your life, then you have to look for somebody who's not a manager. So when you go into what are you looking for? I want to improve my thyroid physiology. Okay, what does that mean to you? There's only a couple reasons why you have a thyroid condition. One, you had your thyroid gland removed or irradiated. Did you have that done? No. Okay, if it wasn't that, and you still have a thyroid gland, then you have an iodine deficiency likely, or you have an immune-driven damage. Did you get that's what you need to, if you want to fix it and not manage it, you have to determine which of those things it is. And if the person is just going to put you on medication, then they're just managing.
Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics, raw, real, relatable podcast. We're your hosts, Susan Robbins, certified epigenetic human performance coach,
and Kate King, licensed psychotherapist, board-certified art therapist, and award-winning author. Together, we bring two perspectives, two styles, and one shared passion for epigenetics.
On this podcast, we delve into topics such as environment, nutrition, fitness, mindset, social dynamics, and trauma as they pertain to epigenetic expression in a way that's relatable to everyone.
We recognize that everyone's needs are unique. There are no one-size-fits-all solutions for your mind, body, and heart. The true magic lies within you.
So if you're ready to create a radiant life through epigenetics and reclaim your authentic self, then buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics, raw, real, relatable podcast. We are your co-hosts. I am certified epigenetic human performance coach, Susan Robbins, and I am here with...
I am Kate King, licensed psychotherapist and award-winning author. And today we have a beautiful repeat of a guest who you guys really liked the last time we had him on. So Susan, why don't you introduce him for us?
Sure. Thanks, Kate. When we had Dr. Eric Balcavage on not too long ago, it was just a month or two ago, he is a thyroid specialist. And through my former work, I had a lot of contacts with a lot of thyroid patients, basically, a lot of thyroid people following. And the feedback I got from having Dr. Eric on was pretty phenomenal. And what I loved about it, it brought up just different ways of thinking that people hadn't heard of. And that's what we're going to concentrate on today is Dr. Eric wants to really let people know, and so do we, that there's options. And a lot of the times we don't know what those options are and what the difference is between them. So we're going to have Dr. Eric talk on that. And we're also, another big buzzword out there is the GLP-1s. And again, I saw a lot of this. I still see a lot of it in my practice. I see a lot of it on social media. You see a lot of the celebrities. Everybody comes back skinny. There's pluses and minuses with that. And so we're going to address that as well in this podcast, because when you understand what your options are, that's when you make the decisions that are best for you instead of making decisions out of pure desperation. Dr. Balcavage is Dr. Eric Balcavage. If you didn't listen to the first one, go back and listen to that one. You will be enlightened. He is internationally recognized as a leading authority in functional medicine and thyroid physiology. He's the co-author of the book, The Thyroid Debacle, and he hosts the Thyroid Answers podcast. Trusted mentor to hundreds of practitioners across the U.S. with over two decades of clinical experience. He specializes in helping patients recover from chronic hypothyroidism, metabolic dysfunction, and complex health challenges that haven't responded to conventional or protocol-based care. So lectures and consults on topics such as cellular thyroid physiology, GI health, organic and acid testing, and methylation. Ooh, it's another one of my buzzwords. Shaping. We're going to have you on for another one for that, Dr. Eric, just to talk methylation. So get your calendar back out. Shaping a new standard for thyroid recovery. So welcome back, and thank you for giving us your time in a repeat performance on our podcast.
I appreciate the opportunity to come back on.
Thank you. We love having you on. And what I love is you're real. Like you put it out there. This is what I think, and this is what we want on this podcast. Raw, real, relatable. You make everything relatable to the everyday person. We chatted a bit before we started recording here, and your big passion right now, which aligns very much with us, is options. People understanding differences between types of treatment when you are a thyroid patient. And can you give us your take on what the differences are out there, what might apply to somebody or somebody else, and really what you do that sets you apart?
Yeah, I think anytime somebody has a health related problem, we've all grown up in this model that you go to the medical doctor evaluates your situation, diagnoses your condition, and then provides a treatment. And if you have symptoms, but there's no disease or disorder, then they're going to potentially prescribe some symptom management care to manage your signs and symptoms until we identify a disease or pathology that needs to be managed or treated. And that's been for the most part, that's what we grew up with. The other option that's out there now and it's grown is what we call a functional medicine approach, which is different than allopathic medicine. We have two totally different jobs. And what functional medicine is really all about is saying, okay, we're not healthy and then develop disease. That's just not the way things work. We have a state of health. We operate in technically two different states. One's a homeostatic state where we make enough energy from the nutrition we bring in to run all the systems of the body in an optimal state at the same time under our current stress load. Whatever that stress load is, we're able to manage it all. The other state is allostatic regulation. And this is a state where you're not making sufficient energy to run all the systems in the body. And this is now a situation where certain situations have to be systems have to be down regulated, certain processes, certain tissues need to be down regulated to shift energy to the more important systems. And this is called allostatic regulation. And this can happen all the time. If I am running a half marathon, I'm going to be in allostatic regulation for a period of time because there's a point of time where I'm not taking in enough calories. My body's not making a lot of sex hormones at the moment. It's not doing a lot of detoxification at the moment. It's not doing a lot of digestion at the moment. Most of the energy and emphasis is going to go to driving the neuromuscular system so I can run this race effectively. But then once that excessive stress goes away, then I should bounce back into homeostatic regulation. And we do this all the time. What happens though is that in many situations, we're under this constant excessive stress load, not these acute episodes, but constant and chronic. And we work in this allostatic load for too long a period of time. For many people, it still seems like it's normal physiology because this is the headache. I always have a headache. I always have gas. I always have, right. I never sleep well. But I've been doing this for so long. This is just how I am. And we consider it normal physiology. Or if you watch TV, you assume that everybody has gas and bloating and blood sugar problems and that all this disorder and disease is a result of a drug deficiency. And we just need to get our medication, sing, dance, and life will be back again, right? We'll be in kumbaya. But when we're in this allostatic regulation period, there's systems that the longer we're in, there's more systems breaking down. We get more signs and symptoms. And then we can start into what we call an allostatic overload situation where we can't manage it anymore. And we're now starting to see what we see shifting into more danger physiology. And this is more significant change, more significant adaptation, more significant upregulation of the immune inflammatory processes, more upregulation of the sympathetic nervous system, downregulation of the parasympathetic system. And this is where we see more significant disease and dysfunction and disease develop. And that's where most people assume that they have a health problem when they enter that state. Oh, I have diabetes. Oh, I have obesity, or I have this. And that's where everybody is. But where functional medicine comes into this whole piece, allopathic medicine typically comes in during that allopathic or allostatic regulatory process, because when we're in that allostatic process for regulation for a while, I got gas, I got bloating, I get headaches, I get migraines, I have a rash, I got this, I have allergies. And the allopathic physician just says, hey, these are just normal signs and symptoms of aging. These are normal signs and symptoms that everybody has. We're going to manage that. There's no disease that we have to cut out or treat, but we'll monitor it. We'll keep an idea. And at some point, you're going to develop disease because that's just what happens to people. Functional medicine's take is, wait a second, that's not the way the body's designed. The body is designed with all the drugs, all the enzymes, all the hormones, everything it needs to run efficiently, given that we don't put an excessive load of stress on the system for an extended period of time and we allow for appropriate recovery. And if we do have excessive stress for an extended period of time, that's when altered physiology starts to occur. That's when dysfunction starts to occur. And we can have altered physiology dysfunction for weeks, months, or years, and maybe decades before we actually see the disease occur. And so functional medicine's role is to take a look at an individual and say, what's based on signs, symptoms, labs, based on looking at this 30,000-foot view of the individual person who's coming in, is there any excessive stress on this physiology that we can reduce or eliminate? If there is excessive stress or strain on the physiology, how is it impacting the individual systems? Blood glucose regulation, thyroid regulation, adrenal physiology, sex hormone regulation, gut physiology, sleep, respiration. How is it impacting those? And what can we do not to manage the effects of that excessive stress, not to manage the dysfunction or the disease? Our job is to come in and say, let's identify the state the person's in. Let's identify what's contributing to their excessive stress load. Let's reduce those stressors to the best of our ability. Use supplementation and maybe medication strategies strategically to keep the person out of crisis, and potentially short-term manage some of the symptomatology while we address the actual root cause or causes. And it's rarely ever a cause, but usually a load of stress. And as we reduce those stressors and we reduce this kind of excessive stress response, that allows the cells, the tissues, the systems to start to return from this cell stress to allostatic regulation and back to homeostatic regulation. And it's only when somebody's returning to homeostatic regulation that they can actually heal and repair. That's when cell-to-cell communication actually occurs. That's when healthy tissue can actually rebuild, regenerate appropriately. And functional medicine's role is to help people get there through diet, lifestyle changes, and strategic supplemental strategies, not just managing signs and symptoms. And I think the challenge today is that we've mishmashed it all together, and people wind up going to somebody. They're frustrated with functional medicine. They hear about, or they're frustrated with allopathic medicine, and they hear about functional medicine or integrative medicine, and they go to somebody who has that shingle on their door. And so they assume that when they walk in there, they're going to get functional medicine care. And many times they're not. They're getting greenwashing of allopathic medicine. And so instead of this nasty cholesterol statin drug that's talked negatively about, we give them a whole bunch of natural supplements to replace the one drug. Instead of asking better questions about why somebody on thyroid medication doesn't convert well, we just give them massive quantities of T3 and assume that that is optimization. If we have a female who's struggling with hormone issues, especially one who's in perimenopause or in postmenopause, we just give them hormone replacement and say, wait a second, the reduction of hormones is a natural process. Is there anything we can do here to improve their physiology so they actually do a better job of making the hormones they need and regulating those hormones. And that's where we should be from a functional medicine standpoint. But it's gotten so skewed that many people don't even know what functional medicine really is. So I think it's my job and other people who think like me to say, hey, here's what functional medicine is. Those drugs, those supplements, those peptides, those medications, they are potential tools to help in a situation to keep you safe, to help strategically improve signs and symptoms or improve tissue function, but they are not the tool. And you cannot use them to optimize somebody's health if the person's not in homeostasis to begin with. Like, it's not, if you have high blood pressure, giving you a blood pressure medication or two or three to regulate your blood pressure optimizes your health. That is not health optimization. That is blood pressure management. Yes, it may keep you safe. It may keep you from having a cardiovascular incident, but it's also going to have negative consequences because now I can't get blood pressure and get blood flow to brain and my extremities. So now I start developing peripheral neuropathies and Alzheimer's and cognitive issues because I never really address the issues. This is long-winded, but the focus of what I want to do and what I think we should be talking about in functional medicine is not to rush in with lots of optimization strategies. And instead, we say, does the person need medication to keep them safe? And if they don't need it to make them safe, then, and the patient wants to recover their health, not just manage their signs and symptoms, we need to explain to them what the options are. If you don't want to change habits, behaviors, lifestyle, relationships, and you just want to do stuff, take a medication. There's plenty of them out there. There's consequences that come with them, and you'll probably have a downward spiral over time where you're going to need more and more, and your health is going to deteriorate a bit faster. But you don't have to change anything other than swallowing a bunch of capsules. If they want recovery-based care, how do I recover? Then we have to say, okay, this is the state you're in. You're not in this homeostatic regulatory state. So the things we see in your physiology are not typically the problem. They are the sign that there's dysfunction. They are the sign of a problem. Symptom. Yeah. And so we can use, if we need medications to make sure you're safe, we use those. But otherwise, the goal is to identify the root cause issues, reduce the excessive stress load, and push you back into homeostatic regulation. And then your body will be able to heal, repair, and make the hormones and neurotransmitters for the most part that it needs, given a healthy diet and lifestyle.
Yeah, there are two things that come up for me that just help my brain really simplify what functional medicine is and how it's different. So tell me if you think I'm off base with this, Dr. Eric. But the first is that functional medicine takes symptoms seriously, whereas the more traditional medicine might say, like, this is normal, or we'll treat it if it grows into a bigger issue. But really, a symptom is a symptom of something. It's not just a symptom that's floating around for no reason connected to nothing. And so I think functional medicine really grounds that into looking for those root causes, that it is here for a reason. It is a messenger from somewhere deep in your system saying, hey, something's heading in the wrong direction. Please listen. So I think that's a sensitivity that's really special about functional medicine. But the second piece that you touched on that feels really important, and this is where it crosses over with my psychology interest too, is functional medicine requires participation on the part of the patient. You have to be willing to invest your time, your energy, your money. Functional medicine isn't often covered by insurance, and sometimes it is partially, but oftentimes that's the piece that scares people away, is they feel like they're opening a financial rabbit hole and they don't know what the expense will end up being. But sometimes it's going to cost what it's going to cost to figure out what that root cause is. And so you have to be willing to invest and you have to be willing to change. And that's a huge issue, both personally and collectively, because collectively there's a lot of kind of undercurrents in the culture that we don't really need to change. Maybe change is bad or scary. And we're all caught up in this hustle kind of culture and movement right now where people can really relate to each other about how nobody's going to change because nobody has any time or energy. We're all overscheduled, overstretched, overstressed. And we're validating that for each other so much that by the time it trickles down into the personal, they show up at their primary care's office feeling terrible or maybe just having some minor symptoms and they're not really willing to change. They just want the easy pill. And like you said, there's a form of medicine for every patient. And for
Mhm.
people who do not have the resources internally or outside of themselves to really change and really invest, great. Take the medicine, understand the consequences, read the fine print when you pick up your prescription, because that's where it says what you can expect. But if you're willing to carve down your life and really cut out anything, do a subtraction process, take away anything in your life that takes you away from your own health, and then you can have the energy and the resources to invest in yourself. That's where I think functional medicine can really shine for people is they show up and they're like, I'm here, I'm ready to do this work. And you show up saying, I have the skill set and this training to help you dive deep. And that's, I think, where the magic happens.
Can I piggyback on her real quick
Mhm.
here? So 3
Absolutely.
things. The financial part, a lot of people don't realize that. I know for me with coaching, and I'm not sure, and Dr. Eric, you can speak on this, the financial part of it. FSA, like the savings accounts, the health savings accounts, or HSA, sorry, HSAs. I know that I have a lot of people that use that with me. And so it's not having insurance pay, but your HSA a lot of the times can cover health coaching. The other thing that struck me when Kate was talking and she said, the collective, everybody's so stressed and nobody has time. Hello, there's one of your big issues that's causing you to get out of homeostasis because you're overextended. You're not sleeping. Your priorities are off. So, that again, like just even you relaying that with where the collective is, one of the reasons we're seeing so much of this. Technology, everything's more available. So people just don't stop and they're on their phones all night. This is creating extra stress in the body because it's taking away from sleep. And when you say they have to want to take away some things, I also want to say, how about adding some things? Adding yourself as a priority instead of taking something away. Because I think part of where the fear comes in of having to actually take control of yourself to make the changes in your lifestyle, because this is what drives everything, your lifestyle and your environment. And when we talk epigenetics here, that is turning on or turning off these genetics. You might have some good ones, you might have some bad ones. But people are so afraid that I'm taking away these foods or I have to take away this activity. How about we look at things? I get to do this for me and adding things. I had a client last night I met with. She just started her program. She's actually another DNA coach and started the PH 360 with me. And she said, I just started looking at the profile and looking at my different foods. And she's a diplomat who's very focused on not, they don't like change. They like routine. So she was eating like the same foods all the time. She said, I'm excited to actually add things and see this. So I think it's so much of that mindset of when you do something healthy, you're going to have to take away or be deprived. And that creates this fear inside of people, which again creates more stress. So I think stress is the big driver. Finance, Dr. Eric, you can speak on this as well, but those were points that just kept popping up for me as Kate spoke as well.
Yeah, we can blame everything on stress, and many times most people think it's the emotional stuff, but really it is it's the cumulative, right? It's our sleep, it's our respiration, it's our mindset, it is what we eat, what we drink, how it's there's a lot of factors that contribute to excessive stress on the physiology. The problem is we like to look at externally like everything is causing me to have this way. When in reality, many times, and people don't like to hear it, it's not the external that's creating the problem. It's how we interpret. And Kate's probably, this is like right up her wheelhouse, right? Which is, yeah, bad situations happen, but that doesn't mean that that has to necessarily be a negative stressor on our physiology for the rest of our life. Like we pack it up in a backpack, and we have to now drag it through life with us. I had a client yesterday who was talking about all their trauma, all their trauma, all their. I'm like, okay, what trauma? Like, what? I had this happen to me as a kid, and that happened to me. I'm not making light of it, and this may be a big deal, but if I talk to anybody, everybody has a story, and they have a story, and some of them are not very good. And yet some people sink as a result of it. It's an anchor that weighs them down for the rest of their life and keeps their physiology in a negative danger state. And other people have the same type of trauma, the same type of stress, and have the ability to have their pity party and then move forward and say, okay, that was a terrible thing that happened. How can I use this as a tool so that way it doesn't sink me and I can learn and I can grow? That's how I look at the stuff that happens to me. It's what I try and discuss with my clients. Like, you don't know what it was like to have an abusive parent. How do you know I don't know that? Maybe I do. And maybe I've used that to move forward. I grew up in a family with alcoholics, and you don't know what that's and that's affected me. You've let it, and it sounds mean, and not everybody has this skill set. And Kate, you should jump in when I'm saying something wrong or stupid, but a lot of really bad things happen to people. And if it was just the bad things are meant to hold people down forever, there's a lot of people who shouldn't be succeeding in life today. How do we take these people that have had the worst life and lives growing up, and especially if they come here where there's huge opportunity and they turn their life around and they're multimillionaires or billionaires, and you'd be like, but they don't know what it's like. Did you look at their health history? Did you look to see what happened to them? Did you see they didn't eat healthy their whole life? They lived in poverty and in famine and all these challenges. And so a lot of times we're thinking it's all about the external impact causing the problem, it's really not about the external as much as how we internalize it. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the biggest factors. And I think we can do that with food, we can do that with nutrition, we can do that with people and personalities and finances and everything else. And it's how we internalize it. I think what goes on in the mind, consciously or subconsciously, plays a massive role in where somebody is on that
Yeah.
allostatic regulation, cell danger physiology. Because if if I'm the person telling me every day that I'm in trouble because I don't have enough money. I'm in trouble. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough money. I don't have, guess what? That's going to create massive stress on your physiology.
Massive.
Which is going to cause you to make some bad decisions, or so there's nothing I can do. So I'm going to drink, or I'm going to eat crap because it doesn't matter anymore, versus somebody saying, listen, I don't have enough money. So instead of focusing on the problem, what can I do to solve the problem? Hey, I don't have enough money. Is the job, do I have a job? No. Okay. Then the number one thing I need to do is go find a job. Am I spending a lot of money frivolously? Yes. Okay. Then let's stop buying the $6 latte and make coffee at home. Let me make a meal instead of buying meals out every day for every meal. Let me get a pork shoulder and smoke it, and then I can have pulled pork that I made on my own and have it for a couple of weeks for meals. And that costs me like $2 per portion versus $12 outside. So I think when we start thinking about what creates that stress load, it's sexy to look at organisms and molds and parasites and toxins and all these things. But I think we always still have to keep in mind those oftentimes they can be an initial trigger sometimes, but many times, especially when it comes to bacteria and dysbiosis and fungal issues, many times those are things that we're getting, that we have in our system already. They already live in the gut, in the GI tract, or we're getting them from our food and our nutrition. But because of the real or perceived stress on the physiology, these things then get to propagate and become another piece of the excessive stress load. And we spend so much time trying to kill the organism instead of saying, what is making the terrain so inviting that these things continue to grow back?
Yeah. I do want to speak to the piece where you were talking about the mental health and psychology aspect. I think that there's something very seductive about that victim consciousness. If you turn on the news, you're going to see it everywhere right now in our world, in our country specifically. And so for people to get to that place where they're available for healing, where they're available to actually start from within instead of just blaming everything externally. And you're right, there is no trauma that can happen. You guys are hearing this from a psychotherapist, okay? There's no trauma that you cannot get through, rise above, and put behind you. I truly believe that. When I work with people on psychological and emotional trauma, I'm not excavating something from the past because the past is gone. You're not a 6-year-old anymore. You're not in that situation. What we work with is the way that trauma is still leaving its fingerprints in the present, and how in this moment, as an adult, with your resources, with your developed brain and all of the capacities you have, how are you still keeping that trauma alive inside of you? And sometimes it is through that victim consciousness. And oftentimes people unconsciously love victim consciousness because it enables them to not do the work. It enables them to not take accountability, to not have hard conversations, to not walk away from toxic relationships, to not leave a job that's sucking their soul. It's a lot easier to blame the trauma than to actually stand up tall and say, I'm going to change this because I'm driving this ship. So I really just want that to be something that all the listeners hear from a source of someone who works with this every single day. No matter what happened to you can heal it, you can move through it. And it's by identifying it in the now, and how the now doesn't need the shadow of the past to be lying over it like a veil. And then once you can look at it from your resourced and adult perspective, oftentimes it doesn't look like such a huge barrier anymore. It's only because you're looking at it through the eyes of a younger part that it feels insurmountable. And this is the part psychology aspect that Susan and I have an episode on, where it comes from internal family systems therapy. And there are a lot of different parts of us. And sometimes we can be completely embodied in a child part, even though you're 50 years old, 80 years old, you're behaving like a 12-year-old because you're coming from the energy of that wound that originated at that young age. But if you can operate from your current self and observe that wound with the compassion, the clarity, the connection of this adult self, you can absolutely fix it the same way you would talk to your child who is going through something. And from an adult to child perspective, you can say, hey, I see this. I see that you're in it. And I also have the wherewithal from my developed prefrontal cortex as an adult to tell you that there's stuff you can do about this. And that is where the magic happens when you really own it. So I think it's important for people to know that, yeah, it's really seductive to be in that enabled place of victim. And there are such things as victims, but I don't think we have to stay there. I think we get to decide if we want to catapult ourselves out of that into an empowered place where we're in charge.
I totally agree. And I think the challenge is in sometimes people are like, if I could fix it, why wouldn't I? Like, or you think they want to be that uncomfortable? You think that they like will start to say they have a disorder. They have like it really, at the end of the day, you may not have the skill set, but it's still a choice. It's a choice of how we behave. It's a choice of how we think. I think a, a really, what you said is so important. And it's something I really have to work with clients many times, especially those who aren't willing or really struggling to change, is people get very comfortable with their uncomfortableness and consider it to be normal. And they're like, I don't feel good, but I don't know what that's going to look like. So I'll just hang out here in my abusive relationship, whether it's with their spouse or themselves, whether it's my terrible diet. Why wouldn't I want to eat? I can't eat those. Why can't you? Because I just don't like them, or whatever. We hear the excuses come out, and I get it. They're struggling, but somehow if we're going to help them, we got to let them know that it's not that their 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 thought process is it's going to be worse over there, or I don't like the uncertainty of knowing what that means. What if if that's if it's a change in diet, but what am I going to do when I go out with my friends and everybody else wants to eat crappy? Don't eat the crappy food. Just eat the way you want to. But then
You're
everybody's
an
going to
individual.
right. Then everybody's going to think negatively of me. Then they're probably not good friends. Or maybe they'll be like, oh, maybe I should do that too. Let me try that. So I think sometimes I think what's Tony Robbins calls it fear, false emotions appearing real. I think they're real emotions feeling real, right? But we project what that's going to be. So yeah, I think it's huge, and I'm not sure how we got from the allopathic to the functional piece to this, but this is a really important piece for most people. Is you've got to believe you can heal and repair. You've got to believe that you have control of that. The moment you feel that you can't recover, that you can't move past your disorder, your disease, your dysfunction, you won't. It's near
Yeah,
impossible to get those people healthy because their biggest stumbling block is their mindset.
absolutely. And I also think people are looking for a diagnosis. When something is wrong, they need to have a name for something. So they come to a functional practitioner saying they're going to diagnose me. They're going to give me something, or they've been to an allopathic that does diagnose something. And then that becomes the thing that they identify with. So they hold on to that. And I can attest to that. It took 11 years to diagnose my Lyme. And so when I found out, everything was Lyme to me. And I see this with whether it's Lyme, mold, thyroid. What's my thyroid? I'm menopausal. Okay, menopausal isn't a bad thing. It just means you need to adjust your lifestyle accordingly because your body is in a different space. So the things that you were doing before need to be changed up a bit. It's just making some changes. But I drove away a 3-year relationship with the whole Lyme thing because for a year I was like, it's the Lyme, everything is Lyme. And then I went and met the DNA group I worked with, which was Apeiron at the time, and Dr. Stickler. And it was at a conference and we started talking about DNA. And I said, but I have Lyme. And he goes, I don't care. And that shocked me to my core. I thought, how rude was that? And I said, why would you even say something like that to me? And he said, because it doesn't matter. It matters to a point, but if that's all your focus is, that's where your focus is going to be, and it's going to be in the negative and fix, fix, fix mode. When you're looking at everything that's wrong, you get into a continual fix mode as opposed to what's right with this body? What are these things that we need to bring it back into balance? He said, that's all it is you're out of balance. You're out of homeostasis. What do you need to bring it back? And that was 5.5 years ago. And that changed my whole way of thinking from that model based victim mode of identifying with a condition that we see people just, that's what they run on.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
drives the mentality.
I think we see it all the time. There's people, and probably in the last week with the new clients I've seen, I've had some who are talking about, I have chronic mold. What does that even mean? I was in a moldy house when I was 12, and so I have chronic mold. How do you who told you that? How do you know that? What are you using to make that decision? I that's what I feel and that's what I believe, and that okay. There's ways to evaluate this. Have you done that? Some people have, some people have not. They just have a belief. The same thing with Lyme. Like I have chronic Lyme. How do you know? Because I had a Lyme test back in 1972 and it was positive. So therefore I still have chronic Lyme. Maybe you don't. Do you have you done new antibody tests to confirm that you don't have any immune response to these infections? No. Okay, then your body addressed it. You know how many people get bitten by ticks and probably get the spirochete and probably never have signs and symptoms? Lots. And did they ever have Lyme? Probably, sure. And there's a lot of people they don't have any negative signs or symptoms. If you check them, you'd say, well, yeah, you had some positive antibodies here. It looks like they're going away. So at one point you had some, you must have gotten bit, but you're like, meh.
The other thing I'm hearing a lot, and this is, I find pretty disturbing, people are diagnosing themselves and treating themselves through ChatGPT and Facebook groups. This fires me up. They're saying I'm literally seeing this on Facebook groups because I stalk these to see where people are with their mentalities, who's doing what. They're going instead of going to a doctor, they're on a Facebook group looking for answers. And you have people that are completely unqualified. They're not practitioners, they're not experienced. They're just saying, "This is what I do." "Oh, you have this." They're showing labs on there, and they'll do it in professional groups, they do it in these private groups. And the more alarming thing I'm seeing is go to ChatGPT and just type in MTHFR and it'll give you all the information you need. And I just said, go, this is where we are. People want answers so badly, they don't know where to look. And they're going off of this generalized AI. And I've messed around with the chat GPT just to test it on some genetic things. And it isn't right. All the time. It comes up with some funky stuff. So I think that's concerning as well. And I think people need to really be aware of where you're getting your information. Everybody is so very different. If you could have 50% of the population that has MTHFR variants, that doesn't mean that all that 50% everyone's expressing, and that everybody, because you have a variant, needs methylfolate, needs B12, it's so individualized to the person, because what if there are other issues that are keeping them out of homeostasis with their lifestyle that haven't even been addressed, or others that, like me, I'm compound heterozygous. Big deal. I'm also COMTAA. That's not a fun combination. But yet with a super dialed in lifestyle, you would never know that. You wouldn't know that from my labs. You wouldn't know that from the way my performance is, from my sleep. Another Kate, 99 body battery today. Yesterday was 100. Like sleep scores in the 90s. These things don't happen when you listen to the general public and they say, "I just got diagnosed with MTHFR." It's not a diagnosis. It's a genetic variant.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's expressing. So where people are getting their information, I think it's so important. And I don't know if you agree with me here, Dr. Eric, but I think it's so important to go to reputable sources and look at you as an individual, not the generalized chat GPT or a Facebook group to get your information.
People want fast, quick, easy
Yes.
right now. That's something
And
that
free.
And yes, free, but just really people I think are looking for fast and easy. And that's something that our technological advancement has done to us that I think is really detrimental. Because to go to Dr. Eric and really start to decide what labs you need and discern what the issue is and find the root, it may not be quick and easy, but it's going to be much more effective and deeper and truer. So I think there's some unwiring we need to do where we back ourselves back from before the time that we all had access to the internet, and we start from scratch. We go back there, and the internet is not a solution to every one of your problems. In fact, it's not a solution to most of them, and in fact, it might things worse. So really remembering that humans, we have studied this stuff. We continue to research these things, and not everything is accessible to AI the way that it is from a human being. And it might feel maybe there's less shame talking to a computer than to a human. There was a study that was done where people were given therapy from a human and therapy from AI, and an alarming number of people preferred the AI therapist. And all that I can really think of that is because it's a lot less embarrassing or shameful or difficult, fearful. It brings up less uncomfortable emotions to talk
Less judgment.
to a robot, right? If you're talking to a human, there's a lot of vulnerability and risk inherent in that. And I think especially when you're talking about your health and your body, and there's a lot of fear for people around the unknown of the body, you go to someone like Dr. Eric, that takes courage. And I think that's really important. I think we should work on that, and we should go.
Yeah, I think I see both sides of it. The problem is you say we should go to somebody who's reputable. How do we determine who's reputable? We don't know. And if you just go to like in if we'll use thyroid physiology as as the perspective, right? There's a lot of loud voices in this functional medicine thyroid space. How do you know who is the reputable person you should listen to? How do you know what the right strategy is for you? You don't. Just because somebody says they're an integrated practitioner or functional practitioner, you don't know that they're reputable. They may have a reputation. They may have a big following on Instagram or YouTube that maybe they've earned it. Maybe it's because they have fantastic content. Maybe because they've paid for that information. So we don't know, but that's my point about we need to really make a better definition of what functional medicine is, integrative medicine, and allopathic medicine are, what their individual jobs are, and what expectations should be when you go there. So that way, when somebody says, I really want a functional medicine approach, what are the questions they should be asking? What should they be expecting when they when they go there? And what are the red flags that they should be concerned about? I had a discovery call with somebody the other day and said, we're talking about what's going on. I'm like, listen, if you should call lots of functional practitioners and find one that you resonate with and
interview.
And they're like, what should I be looking for? I was like, from a thyroid perspective, the red flags for me would be somebody runs a TSH and a free T4, or runs a TSH, a free T4, a free T3, and a reverse T3, doesn't look at totals. If they're not looking at the full panel, and they're just making a decision on this one's low, I'm going to give you a med to raise it, or this one's low, I'm going to give you it to raise it. That is not a functional medicine approach, in my opinion, especially from a T3 perspective. If your T4 is low, you need some medication, but we need to address the cause. If they're going to tell you that we're going to run just this, not even look at the rest of the labs, they're just running a limited thyroid panel, they're not a functional medicine practitioner, because a functional medicine approach wouldn't be, oh, your T3 is low, or your TSH is high, or your reverse T3 is high, and therefore I need to give you this type of medication. It would be, you feel this way, your labs show that you are appropriate for how you feel. And our job, number one, is to make sure you're on an appropriate dose for somebody in your state, not somebody we're not trying to optimize your blood level of the conversion factor. We're just trying to make sure you have enough T4 in the system to be able to convert if the body needs to convert it, but not more than it needs. And now we're going to figure out why this conversion is not occurring. Or you have a hypothyroid condition that's driven by your immune system. We want to make sure you have enough T4 to support the physiology. And if it still doesn't convert, we're not going to try and optimize your T3 into some predetermined range. We're going to be focused on why is the immune system damaging the gland? How do we reduce or stop that to begin with so your gland can recover? And two, what's preventing the conversion of T4 to T3? We want to identify that so we can get you to convert appropriately, and you need less or the least amount of medication possible to have it work appropriately. That would be more appropriate. But we don't know who is the person. So we have to, what do I want? What is that person offering? And what are the options? Do I want a strict allopathic approach? Do I want some type of integrative approach, whatever that means? And everybody has a different understanding of what that means, but usually integrative means, hey, I'm using drugs, I'm using nutrition, I'm using everything. Some people think that's better. I don't know. And then what's the functional medicine approach? Because sometimes people come into functional medicine and they're not getting functional medicine. They're getting something totally different. And then they're frustrated with the outcome and saying functional medicine's terrible. When I talk to them and they say, hey, I was seeing so-and-so and this is what they did, I'm like, that wasn't functional medicine. That was allopathic philosophy with a different medication. That's not what functional medicine's about. Tell me what my optimal dose is. You don't have an optimal dose. We just need to make sure you have enough, because you're not in an optimal state. You're not even in a homeostatic state. So we shouldn't expect any of your labs to be optimal. If anything is optimal, then we have to ask the question, why is that artificially normal or artificially optimal? So that, I think, is a big issue. The second thing is that whether you like it or not, AI is going to be the future, and we're going to be using it more and more as physicians. So as physicians, we have to understand to some degree this is the future. For the patients who are going there, you have to totally understand. This is like asking your neighbor for advice on your thyroid condition. They know from their limited process what they believe something is or what they heard somebody say. Right now, AI is in process. It is cultivating stuff. And as it starts to cultivate stuff, some of it's right, some of it's wrong. You wouldn't even know, because even if you asked it for scientific journals and references to validate what it says, if you start looking at the scientific journals that it throws up there, many times they don't exist. You can't find them, or they're not accurate, or those journals don't actually say what they think, what they put out there. It is going to be the futures. And as clinicians, I think we're going to figure it out more and more how we can utilize AI to make life simpler and easier. I fought it for a while, but now I actually tinker with the AI and put in like labs and say, okay, tell me how you would interpret this. And then I put in my interpretation. And then it's amazing how the AI starts to learn how the clinician actually interprets the labs. And now we're teaching it, but we don't have control of who's teaching AI right now. And so it will be the future. I don't think it's not going to be the future of medicine, but it will be in the future of both allopathic and functional medicine. I fully believe it will be.
I,
And go ahead.
I can speak to this because I work with AI. So my one epigenetic platform that's based out of Australia, the PH360, it is AI based. There's 15 layers of science in the algorithm. It is beyond phenomenal. They put 15 years of research into it before they started putting it out there. And it blew me away. And because I thought it was, when I first came across it 5 years ago, I thought, I do DNA. This is stupid. It's some app, some online based thing. And then started using it. And it blew my mind. The precision in which the recommendations came to me. And so I started coaching with it, and the result, I was able to cut my coaching programs in half and reverse things like high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, things within just a matter of weeks, change labs around. Now, the other thing they came out with this year was a medical-based AI, which we call CLIA, that's specific to this PH360. And I'm using that. And it's it's specific to this platform. So it understands DNA. It understands, it will have someone's profile in there. So it has all the information from their profile. And then I can upload labs. I can upload DNA in there. Sometimes it doesn't upload quickly enough, but I go in just like you with the dabbling. And I, for instance, had a client yesterday. And so I said, this is my client. She's experiencing extreme fatigue. Here's what she's doing. Here's what the most current labs are. By the way, she's also an ApoE4. She's got this and this and this happening as well. And it'll interpret, and then it'll give some recommendations, and it gives outlook. Like if no action's taken, this is what you're looking at. If action's taken, this is what you're looking at in a 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, or 1 year period. However, it's been a phenomenal addition just because it can add some things in that I may not have thought of. However, AI is not going to take the place of the human. And I think that is the most important part, is it knows these clinical things, but it doesn't know the person that we're talking to or that we're meeting with. And when you can combine the knowledge, the empathy, that relationship that you have with your client or your patient, and you combine it with good quality AI, I think because this is what I put on my social media, is personalized health is the future, but I actually have it now. And so I think it can be absolutely utilized in a fantastic way to get people results that are personalized to them in a quicker period of time. But I think it's also important to work with someone that actually understands it. And and has a good basis of whatever you're working with, and whether it's working with thyroid, whether it's working with lifestyle with me, brain with Kate, to be able to apply it properly, because otherwise it's just information. So they could go onto your podcast all day long, go on your website, look at information, but really the value is in you providing your knowledge specific to that individual.
Yeah, look, the challenge is AI can pump stuff out, but we still have to know how to we have to have a skill set and a knowledge base to be able to say that's not appropriate, that's not right, that's incorrect. And somebody coming into this, and you're probably going to see more people jumping into healthcare as these software processes and AI-based processes come into play, where everybody's going to be a coach and they're going to have their AI software. They're going to punch in somebody's labs and it's going to punch out a protocol for here's do this protocol for 30 days, that protocol, that protocol. And people are going to feel they're a clinician because they can use AI to do that. The problem is this is like going to a seminar and having a company say, "Hey, here's the 3 supplements we do for a gut protocol. Here's the 10 supplements we do for a detox. And so do 30 days of gut, do 30 days of detox, and the patient's going to be better." And you go, "Okay." And for a lot of relatively healthy people that are in like early allostatic regulation, a little bit of dietary change and some supplement protocols, a gut protocol, detox protocol, whatever protocol, they're probably going to feel and function better. And you're going to be patting yourself on the back saying, "Hey, this whole AI thing is perfect because it's telling me exactly what to do for the client." The problem is that if when it doesn't go well, that person will also not understand why it didn't go well because they don't understand the physiology behind it. They just know the simple recipe. This happens all the time in people who are early into functional medicine training and they go to some company's conference and they're learning about gut physiology or thyroid physiology. And they go to the weekend conference, and they get all this fantastic information and they get these protocols to do, and they come home and they apply the protocols. And when they work, it's great. But when they don't work, they don't know what to do. And sometimes we blame the patient because this should work. I learned it at this conference. This is my protocol. I do the same thing for everybody. That's what they taught me at the seminar. And then they're frustrated because it doesn't work. Where what's important from a healthcare perspective is, and especially from a functional medicine perspective, everybody learns like processes, reductionist type care and protocols early on with everything, because that's the easiest way to do it. But somebody who is a good clinician, right? We talked about that earlier. How do we know who is who has a reputation, but versus who's just a good clinician? The good clinician is, especially in functional medicine, is not going to be, and I'm saying this, and people may say, I'm not a thyroid specialist. Okay. I talk through the lens of thyroid physiology and the cell danger response so that I can do functional medicine. Okay. Kate deals with the brain and emotions and all those things, but I'm guessing, Kate, you correct me if I'm wrong. It's an ability that's how people they may get to you that way, but you're still dealing with everything maybe from a diet, lifestyle perspective, mindset standpoint. You're still trying to practice functional medicine, but there's an avenue. For Susan, you may look at this from a genomics standpoint, and that's what attracts people. I want to know about my genomics. But at the end of the day, you're not treating somebody's genes. You're still doing what we do in functional medicine, which is saying, what state are you in? If you're in homeostasis, awesome, but they wouldn't be reaching out to you more than likely for help if they were. If they're in allostasis, where are they in that spectrum of allostatic regulation? Early, late stage, what's starting to become symptomatic, and what can we do to reduce the stress load so they can go back to homeostasis sooner than later, so that we don't see dysfunction and disease and more severe problems. And if they're in the cell danger, really truly into more cell danger response, dysfunction and disease, how do we make changes. But we all talk through lenses. But anytime I see somebody, and I almost cringe sometimes when people say I'm a thyroid specialist. I spend a lot of time talking about thyroid physiology and talking through that lens, but it's always in an effort to get to the next piece, right? You've got to resonate with somebody, and somebody's got to, I don't know what he's saying, but I think I resonate with what he's saying. And so I'm interested, right? Same thing for you, Susan. Same thing for you, Kate. And AI is not necessarily going to do that for you. AI is going to give you, spit out some things, but if you're really looking for help and you're really looking to get healthy and get well, AI is going to be a tool, just like medication's a tool, just like supplements are a tool, but it isn't going to be the tool. We're still going to have practitioners that then say, okay, there's a lot going on here. I'm using this tool to give me some insights and some information and maybe some things I didn't think about. Some of those things it said is not accurate and right because I know, because I have a skill set.
Yeah.
And now I can make more informed decision. I think it's one of the biggest challenges in functional medicine is we run more labs, but I don't know that there's a lot of people that are good at interpreting labs, even though they run more labs. They can run an organic acid test, but they really don't know how to interpret it appropriately. And I always say when I teach organic acid, there's 4 levels of understanding of an organic acid panel. The easy one is what they give you on the report. That rarely ever works, right? The next thing is knowing this is the dysbiosis category. This is this cell metabolism, and just having an understanding of, oh, there's dysbiosis or maybe fungal, so I'm going to give this antimicrobial. There's mitochondrial issues, so I'm going to give mitochondrial supplements. There's this detox, I'm going to do detox. That's level 2. Works on healthy, sick people, but not on a lot of people. Level 3 of an organic acid test is knowing what every individual marker is and what it means, and making a more strategic decision based on knowing what the individual markers mean. And then level 4 is being able to say, I know what all these individual markers mean, and I know how they integrate with the blood panel that I had done and the sex hormone panel I had done. So I can be even more strategic in my support process and saying, look, this is a huge web of dysfunction you have going on. Everybody wants to know what their diagnosis is. You said that earlier. And I usually tell people they have a multi-system adaptive disorder that's going on. If they actually need a diagnosis, that's what's going on. Multiple systems are adapting to the stress on your physiology. So you should expect, I've told I don't have an adrenal issue. If you keep this going, you will have an adrenal issue. Don't worry. It's not broken. It's adaptive. This is what we need to fix. But
I'm going to use that. I like
right?
that.
But that is what the process needs to be. And what we don't do as well is we need to integrate these things. And that is the thing that I think we really, as a profession, that should be our strongest thing from a functional medicine standpoint. Mm-hmm. Allopathic medicine doesn't do that very well because they don't need to. They are specialists. They only know about gut physiology and maybe a little nuanced piece of it. I only know about the colon, right? Or they go to a thyroid specialist who only knows about TSH and free T4. And if there's pathology there, they know to cut it out, but they don't understand the conversion part. They don't understand how that thyroid hormone they're giving is impacting their sex hormone physiology, their adrenal physiology, their cholesterol levels, their glucose resistance or transport into a cell. They don't know those pieces of it. Functional medicine, we have to know all of those systems. And the longer we do this, the better we get at the integration and interpretation of labs. And I think what it allows us to do over time is actually run less stuff and be more strategic than just saying, hey, you walked into my office today, I'm going to run an organic acid panel, a blood panel, a gut test, whatever test. And somebody, why do you need all those tests in the beginning? In the beginning, I used to do that stuff too, because you just didn't know how to integrate this stuff. But the longer you're in it and the more people you help, you're able to look at just a comprehensive metabolic panel and be able to go, all right, I already know you got gut issues. I already know you got inflammatory issues. This is an immune issue. It's affecting your blood sugar regulate. There's so much you can learn the longer you're in it and the better you are at interpretation, that you actually less can be done and get more out of it.
Totally
So,
agree. Totally agree. I think, Kate, did you?
Yeah, I just think the word that you said, interpretation, I think that's really the key cornerstone here that creates the gift of being a human being, right? We have our higher level thinking, our analytical abilities, but we also have that limbic brain where we can connect and relate to each other. We can attune with the people that we're working with. AI does not have that, right? We have to be able to feel into how they're showing up, how they might be presenting in ways that they wouldn't be able to tap into through Chat GPT or any other AI based platform. So we have our own supercomputer inside of ourselves. And if there's a future where I think you're right, Dr. Eric, we're moving toward where we can blend our inner computer with I think that could be really beautiful and magical. But this word, this interpretation, that's the skill set you're looking for. And when you're interviewing functional medicine doctors and seeing who's the right fit, maybe the interpretation is part of the questioning that you ask. How do you interpret labs? How are you going to interpret my mind, body, spirit, psychology? How are you going to interpret me and
mhm.
relate that to the health that we're aiming for with my goals? So, just in interest of your time, Dr. Eric, I know that we're at the end
I
of
was just going to ask that.
here, but I wonder if, just in closing, this a little bit puts you on the spot. So just say no if this feels funky. But I wonder if you could offer just the audience maybe 3 questions that they could ask a provider to see if it's a right fit for them. And maybe it doesn't have to be necessarily specific to thyroid health or to any type of health, but if you're a person out there dealing with a thing and you're looking for a functional approach, do you have any specific questions that you would recommend they ask?
I will tell you from a thyroid perspective because that's the market I typically talk to. So when somebody asks me, like, what should I be looking for? Number one thing I want them to know is, what are they looking for? What are you looking for? That's one of the most important things you need to go into the conversation with is, what are you looking for? And then helping them understand that manipulating a blood pressure, manipulating your reflux symptoms, manipulating something without telling you why you have that and addressing the root cause is a management strategy. If you don't want just a management strategy that you need to take for the rest of your life, then you have to look for somebody who's not a manager. So when you go into what are you looking for? I want to improve my thyroid physiology. Okay, what does that mean to you? There's only a couple reasons why you have a thyroid condition. One, you had your thyroid gland removed or irradiated. Did you have that done? No. Okay, if it wasn't that, and you still have a thyroid gland, then you have an iodine deficiency likely, or you have an immune-driven damage. Did you get That's what you need to, if you want to fix it and not manage it, you have to determine which of those things it is. And if the person is just going to put you on medication, then they're just managing. And that's not necessarily the person that you're looking for. If it's a person who's already on medication I may still ask that same question, and they were like, I want to recover my thyroid physiology. Okay. If you go to see somebody in functional medicine and they're not looking at a full thyroid panel and especially other markers at the same time with it, then they're probably a manager and they're going to give you either T4 or T3, whatever their drug of choice is. If you don't want that, then you should ask them, how do you evaluate my thyroid physiology? What are the tests included in your thyroid panel? Do you run it with any other tests? What treatments do you typically use for a thyroid condition? If the first things they say are, I run a TSH, a free T3, free T4, that's a manager. If they say, I only run TSH or free T4, that's a manager. They just use different medications. If they say, I just run a thyroid panel and they don't run total hormones, manager. If they don't, especially as an initial interpretation, they don't run other inflammatory markers, lipids, blood sugar markers, and in the beginning, probably a manager. That's fine if that's what you want, but that's not what recovery strategy is going to be. So if you want recovery, that's some of the questions you have to ask. And then the other question I think is important to ask is, how are you going to help me identify what's causing my thyroid condition so I can recover? Or how are you going to help me recover my thyroid physiology so the medication actually converts appropriately? And if they say that your thyroid gland can't recover, that's a person who's a manager. They're not even, there's no way you're going to get better because they don't believe your thyroid gland can potentially recover. If they say the number one thing we need to do is optimize all your hormones, so we're going to optimize your T4, we're going to optimize your T3, we're going to optimize your estrogen, we're going to optimize your testosterone, that's probably a red flag for health recovery, because most people who are struggling with chronic signs and symptoms and searching for allopathic and functional practitioners aren't in homeostasis. They are, and we throw this term optimized around so much, it's been bastardized. But my argument would be, if you're chronically unwell and you get your labs done and you have abnormal values, your body is optimizing your physiology for the state you're in. I often run immune panels where we look at the T cell populations, especially with people who have immune driven conditions. And people often are like, oh, is that my problem? No, this is likely this Th17 cells are elevated because there's a mucous membrane issue. This is an imbalance, but it is the body's optimal response against some type of organism or infection. So we make this decision, we have this idea in our mind that if we just manipulate all the blood values into range with drugs or supplements, that we've optimized somebody. And more often than not, we haven't optimized them at all. The innate intelligence of the body was already trying to optimize the physiology based on the real or perceived threats on it. So I'm not sure if I said an answer for what that question would be, but I think they need to understand, how are you going to help me identify what the root issues are and to restore my physiology? And if they start with, we got to optimize all these things, to me, that's a red flag.
Yeah. No, I think you
I think, yeah, it was answered great.
Yeah, and you gave us good examples, I think, that are
Yeah.
to true patients in real life. So if you remember from our last podcast, we have a question that is our very last question that we ask for you for your personal life so that people can understand how you're walking your talk. And it is, how are you cultivating your own radiant life through epigenetics?
Yeah, I think it's my habits. I'm very focused on habits, and it's one of my fitness factors that I talk to clients about. Like when we look at all the things that are going on with them, I think one of the most important things, and it's foundational to me, is, what are your daily habits? That in a large part is going to determine how much time you have, how much stress you perceive, how much gets done, what does or doesn't get done. And so I'm a very regimented guy. And to improve health, you have to have healthy habits. So the start of today, and every day is a great example. What happened today? I'm up at 5:20 to 5:30 every day. And I have a full-size gym in my basement. And we start the day with a strength workout. Some days it's more of a yoga type or stretch or mobility session. But every day starts the day with some type of fitness routine. Usually every morning after that, depending on schedule, is some type of cardiovascular activity, even if it's just a nice 40-minute walk or whatever. Then get into the start of, okay, let me get my early morning nutrition, whatever I need to get in for that, and then sit down and get my day started. But I'm very habit oriented. What's happening through the day? When am I eating? What's generally, and I'm not anal about what I eat, but everything is planned out to some degree. My life is fairly planned out. My days are planned out. So it's not down to a T, but I don't schedule in social media time because I really don't spend much time on social media. But how much time, if you don't plan out your day, how much time might be spent doing things that aren't healthy and productive for your physiology. So the things that are important to me, my sleep schedule, my respiration, my diet, my physical fitness, and some of these other things that are really important, mindset, personal growth time, like they're scheduled. And the reason they're scheduled is because if you don't schedule them, then you're likely not to do them. So I have to schedule those into my life because if I don't, they won't get done. And guess what? Something else is going to fill that void. Sure, I could get up and just watch news or watch TV, or I guess I'm too old, but maybe sit around and play video games or for a couple hours, or get caught up on a whole bunch of negative stuff that's not benefiting my health and well-being. So to me, I think that is like an easy key. Like, how am I walking the walk and doing what I should be doing? It starts for me with habit, creating a habit, not a behavior of health and fitness, but a habit of health and fitness. And when people ask me what the difference is I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Colorado for a wedding for 10 days. I will still be up every morning at 5:30 doing the same thing, regardless of what happens. And it won't be, people will be like, why? You're on vacation. Because this is who I am and what I do.
Yeah, it's your lifestyle. This is
Yeah.
it. If someone wants to reach you, give a shout out to your website, your podcast.
Dr. Eric Bal- drericbalcavage.com is the website. The podcast is Thyroid Answers Podcast. And other than that, they can find me social media. Instagram is, I think, where we
I found
post
you.
most of our stuff. Yeah. And my book is out there. It's called The Thyroid Debacle. We also, if you go there, I think we have what we call the Thyroid Recovery Blueprint out there, which is like a DIY course for people who want to try and recover their health. And the focus there is not on what are your labs, what do you need to do. The focus there is on all these 18 fitness factors: mindset fitness, physical fitness, dietary fitness, all things that people can self evaluate themselves and then support strategies for all these questions. Okay, I scaled this question, I put a 4 out of 10. Okay, so now I go here and here's strategies to improve that thing. And because there's so much that people can do, regardless of their diagnosis, to improve their health and well-being.
Absolutely. We're going to have you back on again. We didn't even get to touch on the GLP-1. That's another rabbit hole I want to go down at some point. But
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get there. We went in a different direction. It wasn't
That's
even
okay.
what we started off and talked about, but yeah, I think we had a good conversation. I hope your listeners enjoy it. And anytime, yeah, just reach out. We'll have a conversation.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much again for your time. We know how valuable it is. And I think we're going to get another deluge of comments and feedback on the importance of this, again, creating awareness and just allowing people to start opening their minds to look at choices that are out there and how to look at what the differences are. And the main point is what's right for them, because we are so individual in what our body needs, our mind needs, but where we are and what we need at this time as far as support. So thank you so much for joining us. Please, please, please share this podcast. There's so many people out there with thyroid issues that feel totally stuck. Let's get the conversation going. Thank you so much for joining us. Go out, have a great day, and be your most authentic selves. Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, we'd love for you to share it, leave a review or comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Help us get this information out to everyone who could benefit, and we'll keep bringing you the content you crave.
You can also check out our podcast site at everydayepigenetics.co and sign up for our newsletter to stay updated on upcoming episodes. The link is in the show notes.
If you're interested in DNA or epigenetic coaching with Susan, or Radiant Life Coaching for deep inner work with Kate, our contact info is in the show notes below.
Now go and make it a great day and let your most authentic self shine.